Hi, this is Damien from AtHope, and I am an axiological atheist, which can be understood as a value theory or a value science atheist, which can understand another way as I'm an axiologist, a value theorist, and I'm also an atheist and understand and view the subject from that vantage point. And I'm here with a guest, and we're going to talk a little bit about Firebrand Atheism, one of the passions of mine. Certainly as a passion as an axiological atheist, because it's a value to care about humanity. And it's also a value not to stay silent with oppression. Religion is a form of oppression. And I'd like to talk to my guest now, so could you go ahead and tell us your name and a little bit about you?
Hi, my name is Andrea. I'm also an axiological atheist. Live in Kansas, and definitely ready and excited to speak a little bit more about axiological atheism.
Right on. Well, axiological atheism, a lot of people see as almost like a form of humanitarian or humanist anti-theism, because there's no axiological atheist, someone who says that, can be anything but an anti-theist. In other words, it's because it's a value judgment. You value judge the God. So when you look at the God concept, regardless if it exists or not exists, just the concept of God, if you look at what it is, it's a being who generally can wantonly remove human rights against or without any care of the human's will. And what I mean by that is, if you can say that any act that I do just when I'm non-harming people, like let's say if I was gay, I'm not gay, but let's say I was gay, if I decided to do that and they would say that I'm harming someone, that's not real morality. That's pseudo-morality. Pseudo-morality is basically when you put personal morals into the general public ethics. So to me, I break it down as morality is like a general heading. Okay, like everything's under, in a sense, morality. And then morals, values, and ethics are things inside of morality. Okay, so values are what gives all morals meaning. Like if I say, I shouldn't rape someone. Okay, that's in the sense of value. A value is not really about my desire, right? This value is not, is Damien's desire important or not important? It's that the other human's rights are important. That another human owns their body. So in a sense, I'm appealing, to their self-dignity, their own rights. It's not about, is rape wrong because you should or should not desire rape. That really is regardless. It matters about the behavior. It's where the rubber meets the road. And so as an axiologist, the same thing when we look at the God concept. The concept itself, as designed, is generally some sort of an authoritarian dictatorship. And I'm sorry, I don't want a dictator. And I don't think that, and it's even beyond my desire or wants. It's actually unethical because it cannot occur without the violation of human dignity and human rights. And so the God cannot be, whether a concept used as bigotry, which it generally is. I see God as a three-letter noise, that people utter to support whatever bigotries or hate they have. But see, I also see on the other side, just to be totally, axiologist, I look at the other side and I do see people use that same three-letter noise for love. Yeah, but see, the problem is there's no guarantee that this dictatorship type of a concept can truly be limited to love. Really. I mean, in fact, as we see through the history of religion, right? Which is why I'm a firebrand. With history of religion, we look back. This concept has not produced human well-being, human flourishing. No, it's produced tribalism. It's produced where you can have hate of your own family. You can have hate of others you don't even know. I mean, it's a form of, in a sense, bigotry, like xenophobia. It's like religion almost produces xenophobia because we have to be afraid of that which could remove our reality of the religion being true. And so anything that's a threat to that has to be destroyed. But in a sense, it's not like religion to me has invented the concept of the things we don't like, we destroy. That's just kind of a human nature. It's just that religion is used to hijack that negative part of human nature and maximizes it. Now, people will say that religion also produces love. Yeah, not as well as it produces hate. Man,
exactly.
If you boil down the how much love, I mean, just look at not a certain religion, but just look at religion as a whole. Love that it's produced, and love to me would mean also that we can get along with our neighbors, that we would respect each other. That's love. I mean, any love that doesn't revolve respect is not love.
Exactly.
So to me, for you to say, not you, but for someone to say that, religion and the whole has produced some sort of a respect for human dignity and come on, it allowed people from the beginning to justify in the Bible slavery. I mean, this has not been a production of true morality. It's not been.
And it's mass control, and this sounds horrible, simple-minded people, because. In my opinion, when religion of itself in the beginning was created, not to quote the Bible, but when this was all created, there were people that were really smart enough and sociopathic or psychopathic enough to realize we can control these people and their money, because think about it, lots of religions have tithing or donation or whatever, and they realize, oh, we can convince these people to do whatever it is we're saying. And them to do what we want and what we desire, which is not helping humanity as a whole. As we're saying, there's no value for everyone. There's group A over here that is mostly benefiting, and then there's everyone over here. And honestly, it kind of puts a lot of society that, especially, diehard, I don't want to say Catholics, but I grew up Catholic, so I often use that when I'm describing things.
Yeah, go ahead.
It's out of convenience. Not to say pick on them, but it's just convenient.
Yeah.
Kind of an arrested development where it's not that they're necessarily dumb, it's just their brain literally is just stuck in one mindset and they cannot grow mentally or ethically as a person.
Oh, I agree.
Which anything, whether it's religion or just anything as a whole, should be benefiting each and every member of society, not just quote, those in power.
Well, and religion decides, for itself, that itself is always in power. I mean, when generally whatever religion you have as the dominant religion of any given area, you're generally going to see that religion is the one that's doing the oppressing. In other words, if Christianity is the one leading the country, then Christianity's doing the oppression. If Islam is leading the country, generally Islam is doing the oppression. If Buddhism is leading the country, guess what? Buddhism is doing the oppression. Look at Myanmar. You have, Buddhist monks being terrorists. I mean, so is it the fact that, and there certainly has been any kind, even if you look at, I say shamanism, look at Genghis Khan. He was a shaman. Yeah. If you look at pagans, look at the Romans. They're going out. So religion itself is no guarantee for this goodness they claim, but it certainly is a guarantee for violence.
And what I find interesting and just befuddling is any religion, and I'm going to use where I went to high school, for example, from kindergarten to 12th grade in Catholic schools. My high school's mascot is a crusader. Well, if you know what the crusaders is, they're like, oh, because my school, they'll admit the oppression, but then be like, oh, it's not really oppression because they're helping us. I'm like, that's like the Lifetime movie. It's like, oh, I know he hits me, but he really loves me. And it talks about what you were saying. Exactly. There needs to be respect in order for there to be love. And
well, yeah, if you say you love without respect, I mean, unless you're just meaning it positionally, like I can disrespect your behavior. But what I'm talking about respect is the respect of the human dignity. Now, if you disrespect human dignity, you don't love. I mean, it's just, yeah, you certainly are erring in your ability to love, if anything, because some people certainly are not, perfect. I don't claim to be perfect, and what the great thing about being, an atheist and not religious is I don't have to try to claim perfection. I know this is a fumbling start to a run and a fall and a trip as we go. I mean, there is no perfection, but that does not mean that we can't hold people or things accountable, including ourselves.
Exactly. learning and growing. That's kind of why, one of the reasons why I kind of accepted atheism was religion. We're 100% correct. Even when proven wrong, we are still correct. And they're like, well, this is why science is stupid. Everything's theories are just wrong. And I'm like, no, the reason they're categorized as a theory is because once something is shown as evidence, like, oh, here's why this needs to be fixed, or here's why we now know it's wrong, it kind of grows and evolves.
Yeah.
Religion is just stagnant.
Well, it desires to be. Well,
Exactly.
it desires to look back. It's like science constantly updates old information for new to become more accurate. Religion fights every new advance for that which is old. Not desiring because it was old started in accuracy, but simply because they like it. Oh, but it makes people feel good. Yeah, so does drugs. So does aggression to a sociopath. And should we just say that's a good thing? Just because somebody likes it?
And to kind of go back to how you're talking about rape, I'm sure that the rapist felt good he was doing, but does that make it ethical that he went and raped that chick?
No. In fact, it wouldn't even matter his opinion on how he feels about rape. The action of raping is the issue. Now, his intent, as in he may, intended to do something or not, like, it makes it worse. In other words, like if someone stalks you outside your house and then rapes you, that's different than, just accidentally walking through a park and it happening, in a sense. I'm not saying either okay, both wrong. But one is more, they're intent on doing it. They're hunting you down. Of course, someone could do that in a park also. But I'm just making a comment that, his opinion about rape doesn't matter. In other words, like he could say, I'm a feminist, but, I did rape because she said no when I was already hard, or whatever nonsense. It doesn't matter. This is my opinion. You could be currently having sex, and your partner, male, female, whatever, says stop. You don't.
Stop.
To me, rape. Because somebody at all times, in all ways, owns their body. It's just...
And needs to consent.
Yeah, right. And so just understanding that should make the God concept vile. I never gave God consent. Never. Not one time in my life.
No one has. No one has.
I was told to accept God as a child. I was told I had to fear him. I was told he's going to harm me if I don't do these things. I was never, offered ideas like, hey, what do you think of this idea? Do you think it's true? Do you think it's accurate? Here's evidence? No, I was just told that all these fear-mongering tactics.
Well, and for example, like in Catholicism, you're baptized shortly after you're born so you don't go to hell just in case you die. I'm like, what has, let's say, a week-old baby, like a 7-8-day-old baby done? If you're going off of the 10 Commandments, what has an infant done to go to hell? Because honestly, not that I'm pro-murder, but like, how can a baby go, like, let's say, shoot up a school?
Well, but they have that nonsense of sin. They start off with the logical, or I should say morality fallacy, not logical fallacy, a morality fallacy that sin equals unethical. No, it does not.
And that's why I've always hated the term sins of the father. It's like, well, it's Adam and Eve, an original sin.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh, so like BTK, a notorious killer from Kansas, where I'm from, I'm like, oh, so because he went and killed a bunch of people, that means his kids are horrible, evil people. No, those are separate.
Or 2,000 generations from his kids are still guilty. That's how ridiculous it is.
And they're separately removed things. If it's not, I don't see the logic. And like, and whenever you bring it up, they're like, oh, pray about it. I'm like, that doesn't do anything. That's like praying the gay away. That doesn't.
Well, even if prayer worked, let's just say prayer worked, and your God's immoral for asking me to beg for my own freaking life, while they violate my rights, right? Wow.
If God is a loving parent, like people claim, I don't see how he's a loving parent.
Well, you would say, what do you mean by love? Because you'd have to. What do you mean by love? Because I'm not hearing respect for human dignity. So until I hear that, I'm sure it's not love. Or unless you're saying your God's an error and doesn't know how to properly love. But then I thought your God was perfect.
Exactly. And if you're going, because I even presented this to a friend of mine. Well, friend as in associate, whatever you want to call them, where I'm like, okay, pretend we're not even talking about God. Which, granted, I hate using that and trying to suppose logic on someone, but...
Oh, I like doing that. I like pushing logic on people.
I go, now, name to you what you think a loving parent is. Start naming, the stuff we've been talking about. And I go, name one way, or even 2 or 3 ways, that God 100% perfectly fits that. And they just walked off. I'm like, you can't even give me one? Like, one.
Oh, yeah, that reminds me of, I asked someone one time, they said, oh, God is great. Okay, tell me one great thing about God. He said, well, God created the universe. Well, that wouldn't make him great. Because if he could do it, but well, they don't understand. They understand the logical fallacy. If God can do anything, then he could have done better than this.
I can create a turd that doesn't make me fucking perfect.
Well, think of this. Should we have child cancer? A loving God would never produce such a nonsense, right?
Exactly.
He would not. There's babies born where their skin itself is actually cracking and bleeding because it's fighting its own body. Not loving God. I don't have to look anymore. Just that right there. I don't hear nothing about anything else. The fact that God would do that, then it's not loving God, and not an ethical God. I mean, any God that can sit there and allow, just like the fact they go, oh well. God, doesn't do things. It's man. Oh, so God doesn't have water fall in places, having droughts. God doesn't allow crops to die. God doesn't allow diseases to infest animals. I mean, have thunderstorms and hurricanes and earthquakes and volcanoes. I mean, it's unending.
I love when people want to use God as it being against medicine, and they're like, "Oh, it's in the Bible." I'm like, even if you're using that as a source of something we shouldn't do, you also shouldn't be eating meat on Friday. List off at least 20 different things. I'm like, yet I know for a fact you do all those things. And secondly, if you're going to do that, didn't God create the doctors with their knowledge and training and whatever? And the fact that the science you're mentioning is 20 to 30-year-old science from the 80s? How does something from science that is proven to have evolved in 30 years when there was a huge issue with blood transference apply to 2017 or 2018? I'm like, I can say if it was 1985 being concerned about blood transfusions because that was new science and hadn't been perfected.
Yeah.
But your religion, I love how they are okay with the religion being, they're like, oh, well, just take God out of, no, I'm not taking God out of the religion because God is part of the religion. God is why you have the religion. You can't really separate it like that. That'd be like, oh, Andrea's an okay person minus the 3 people she killed. No, that's not.
Well, you can certainly separate religion from God, but you can't separate the religion's immoral claims from reality or from ethics. I mean, the fact that that a religion itself, has a God, to me is more of an excuse for all the other nonsense they want to push. Because I can push any hate I want. Oh, God said, oh, not me. I'm just following God's rules. So to me, religions generally I would see as wanting that. Because if I said, well, the Dalai Lama said go torture people, it doesn't sound as good as say, well, Lord Vishnu said to do this. And who can question Lord Vishnu? Or Yahweh or whatever.
And I love when they're like, well, everyone's created in God's image and you're made the way God wants you to be. Yet they'll be bigots towards black people or gay people. I'm like, wait. If we're all created in God's image, in my opinion, God should not have a gender, yet he's mentioned multiple times as male.
Yeah.
In most religion texts. And secondly, if I'm created in God's image, any race that isn't white, and to be gay. So if I'm in God's image, that shouldn't be.
Well, yeah, and if you look at if you care about science and you looked at what the first humans were, then God, must have liked people to be, African, and not white. I mean, white is a new occurrence. It's like less than 10,000 years.
And I love that people think Jesus was blonde hair or blue eyed. I'm like, that's common sense that he wasn't. If you're looking back at genetics, I'm fairly certain if we traveled back to when Jesus was allegedly alive, he did not look like a New Kids on the Block member. I'm fairly certain.
Yeah, no, definitely not. Well, and even it's ridiculous that they would want that. I mean, it should be accurate. I don't understand why they want to claim truth, and I agree with you, that they have the acceptance of just blatant inaccuracy. Like you said about Jesus being white and, practically blonde with, blue eyes. I mean, come on.
And I had some idiot I wrote was like, what, you think Jesus is black? I'm like, no, I'm not even claiming he's black. He probably looks more Jewish, traditionally ethnically Jewish, or, Middle Eastern than he does anything.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Which, of course, is the kind of people they don't like now. Those long-bearded people from the Middle East.
Exactly. Because honestly, if Jesus tried to get on a plane right now, he would be detained.
Especially if they never heard about stories of Jesus.
He'd be freaking detained and questioned when he's just walking.
But so I wanted to ask, did you have any specific issues you wanted to address about Firebrand Atheisms or questions or?
I mean, I don't really have any issues with Firebrand Atheism, just because, since us meeting and me getting on more atheist groups, I've done my own personal research and, you've answered questions or say other people online have done it just because, when it was first, I don't want to say presented to me, but when I first heard it, I was like, oh, this is an interesting concept. And with anything I think people find interesting, they want to typically read up on it, learn as much as they can, and I'm like, oh, I agree with all of this. Way more than I ever did with any religion.
Well, I see it as reality and freedom fighting, that we're really trying to free people from this non-reality of religion and gods.
Well, I think it's always when someone's like, are you angry at God? I'm like, are you angry at the Easter Bunny? Because it's really the same thing when you're saying that to an atheist. Like, I'm not mad at something that I think, A, is not real. If he was, then yes, I would be, and we'd have a very long-winded discussion on why I had an issue.
Well, I'm angry about theism.
Well, yes, but that's
the belief in a God. Now that makes me have issues, but it's not anger. The fact that someone believes. I mean, if people believe that their sports team is the best, I hate sports, so I could really care less. It would be meaningless. Exactly. Some people that their whole life is about that. You know what I think? Cool, go do you. Now it's if they were to tell me though that I have to wear sports jerseys in a certain sport jersey, and if I ever got caught with the wrong sport jersey, I'll be beaten down or sent to a place where I'll be tortured, then I have a massive problem with your sports addiction.
Exactly, because and there's an old saying, and I'm going to paraphrase, don't remember properly. I can only really control me. My control should stop at myself. I'm not really, and the thing is why people are always shocked that I'm an atheist, because they always assume, or a vegetarian, that I'm going to be, in their face screaming at them 24/7, and yes, I will openly discuss my views, and that could possibly lead to a heated discussion, depending on how it goes.
Yeah.
But my mentality is, I'm never going to get angry if somebody questions my beliefs. Versus a lot of theists I know were always personally offended that I don't 100% agree with them or even agree at all with their beliefs. It's never occurred to them.
Yeah. Oh, it's like one guy said to me, Damien, I'll believe your beliefs when you agree to believe mine. And I said, I don't agree to believe yours, and I'm not asking you to believe anything I say. I'm saying you need to think with logic, you need to think with reason, you need to demand evidence. If I don't do that, then you should challenge me too. But when you profess to believe things that are not justified, are not warranted to reality, have no substance to prove them in any kind of an evidentiary way, and you want me to think they're true? And then on top of that, they're immoral, and on top of that, the thing that's supposedly running it all is also immoral and wishes to supposedly remove my human rights? Yeah, fuck that.
I love when they're like, when I've heard people go, well, you need to believe in something. I'm like, I do, just not a deity. Logic, reason, science, benefit to humanity.
Yeah.
Those are multiple things to believe in. They may not be the Ten Commandments, the Quran, the Torah, whatever, name any other religious text that's out there. But just because I don't believe in those doesn't mean I, or even you, for example, don't have a belief system.
Well, I believe things that are warranted and justified to believe. If something is warranted, in other words, you give me adequate evidence, adequate reason, I'm willing to entertain it. When you offer me things that have no reason and violate reason, that have no logic or violate logic, I'm not even going to consider them. You're talking nonsense.
Exactly. And I just always find it interesting to just watch random Facebook posts like that, too. I'll never get in the argument because I'm like, it's not even worth my time. But it is always fun to watch it.
Yeah, I tried to get into some, but it's not because I like arguing. I actually don't. It's just because I like to push the ideas out there because, nothing happens, if we're always appropriate. That's why I think Firebrand Atheism, is a moral duty for me. It's not a choice for me personally. Axiological Atheist, it is a moral duty for me to go out there and help my fellow people that are being persecuted, period. I try to do this with all kinds of things.
And it's always interesting when people will willingly remove you from their life. Well, not you specifically, but just atheists in general, because, well, I don't know why you don't agree with my religion. I thought it was an exemption. No.
Oh, yeah.
That's like, and granted, I know this video is going to be seen on multiple platforms, but that time that you had commented on a comment from a post I made, that girl, you kind of remember her that was, like, randomly, obviously quoting the Watchtower the entire time?
I sort of remember
it. It was like a month or so ago.
Yeah.
She's actually now blocked me on Facebook.
I've had atheists block me because I'm against Buddhism. I have atheists block me because one atheist guy, I have a friend for like 5 years. He blocked me because I said that the Taoism started with a sexist idea, and I showed the ancient Chinese that proved it, and an ancient Chinese linguist explained it, not me. I can't even read Chinese. He explained it. He's valid in the world. And you're going to say that you're right, that sexism is not started, but he's wrong? I'm like, yeah, nice try. Well, show me another credible source.
A friend of mine and I that are into horror movies, we've been talking about how she found Alistair Crowley interesting. And I'm like, well, yeah, he is a somewhat interesting person. I'm like, the issue I have with him is that he's blatantly sexist in so much of what he writes. I forget how to pronounce Thelma. I think he does Thelma. I think that's what he did.
Yeah, Thermite or something like that. Yeah, I can't remember now exactly what it's called.
But it's just been like a 4-year-old conversation, so I'm like trying to remember between how many conversations any normal person has in 4 years. But I'm like, if you actually read his stuff and don't just like fangirl over the fact that he's mentioned in a lot of like horror movies or heavy metal music, he's really a sexist asshole.
Yeah.
And yeah, he can write, but so could any idiot. Any idiot can come up with a religion. Because I've actually researched this because I kind of weirdly got into that Leah Remini show, the one that she does about Scientology.
No, I don't know.
And, well, because she left Scientology, and now she's doing, like, a documentary to help people get out of it, which is
great.
Cool.
That's great.
Because she just started, like, piecing together how much bullshit is in the religion. Because apparently, whoever's in charge of it, I forget his name, his wife is, like, she used to be around him all the time. They're a very public religion. And she's like, well, why isn't she out in public with him anymore when her job position requires her to be in the public?
Yeah.
You know, they'd be like, where'd the vice president go? Shouldn't the vice president be around the president in public? And nobody would tell her what happened, and my mind is blank from the creator. L. Ron Hubbard, okay. Oh, I forgot that I don't know. He has apparently written more fiction, and this is like excluding what he wrote for Scientology, which is obviously fiction as well, but if he excludes Scientology, he has written more fiction than any other author in the world. And I'm sitting here thinking, okay, obviously Scientology is just in such a weird bubble that, oh, all he wrote for Scientology is true. But he's written all this other fiction that literally is almost the same thing as Scientology. Because I've read some stuff Scientology, and I've read his quote, sci-fi nuggets. And I'm like, you can't see the causal connection between
this pile of shit and this pile of shit, you know?
Well, and that goes back to axiology. You're asking, can you value judge? Axiology is about understanding how to look at things of value in a more of a mathematical kind of a way, where you're looking at a logical way. You're like, okay, so if you have this, it has a certain value. Let's just say shit, dog shit out in the yard. You're out in the yard, laying on my grass, it's 0 value. It's actually minus value. I had to go pick it up and throw it away. I'm going to leave it on the lawn, turn white or something. So, but if you take that same dog shit and you grind it up and you put it as fertilizer in a sense with mulch or whatever, now it actually can become beneficial and have a positive value instead of just a negative value. But it's this understanding of the layers of value. Everything's not just black and white. I mean, it's layers of value depending on what you're talking about. Some things are black and white, but that's not the norm. Norm is that things have layers of value. Because even if you said this thing is bad, well, I would say, and isn't something else worse? And isn't something else worse than that? And something worse than that, and worse than that, and worse than that. So you understand there's a value layers on top of each other, and an axiologist can look at that, and then, as you said, look at one thing and go, that's shit. It has a negative value. This is also negative value.
And I was pointing that out to a friend. They're like, well, can't you use that for religion? I'm like, I'm not saying 100% of every religion is horrible, evil, and bad, but I'm like, the good of it doesn't outweigh the bad.
Well, I'm sure that, exactly. I'm sure the KKK probably as a social function for white racists is probably a great organization. Probably makes them feel good, everything's safe. It's a piece of shit. You can't see that. You're fucking blind.
Exactly. And I actually use the KKK. I'm like, I'm sure that they have fun family functions or whatever. Bring the kids, eat some fried chicken, whatever. I don't know if they eat fried chicken because, they hate black people, not to stereotype my people. But, whatever it is they're doing, if they have parties, I can see that probably happening, because there probably are some fun things they do together. But that doesn't mean their overall message is full of love and positive for society.
Even if it was, and they still said racist shit, fuck them.
Exactly. And honestly,
it's like you said about Catholics. Catholics, but they allow their priests to go molest kids. If I was a Catholic, I'd be done. Even if I could believe in Christianity, I could not accept that.
Exactly. And I'm like, it'd be one thing if it was like, and I'm not excusing pedophilia, so you just know that. But I'm like, granted, you can't control every priest. That's impossible. But at the same time, it's the cover-up that I have the issue with.
Totally.
That's my big issue. Is like, I'm not saying what they did was right, but I'm like, if you find out Father O'Shaughnessy is raping a little kid, you should be like, not only have you taken up your priestly duties, we're calling 911 and getting you thrown in jail.
I totally agree.
I would have much more respect for that church. Be like, hey, we had the issue. We're helping the kid get counseling. Here's like $1 million, and we're getting a new priest, making sure he won't be doing it.
Well, it happens with the Mormons. It happens with Jehovah's Witnesses and Christians and Muslims. It happens with everybody. Buddhists.
Well, yeah.
The point is that why the Catholics have in a sense, a larger stake in this is because they get a lot more access.
They want that money from the parishioners.
Well, not only that, what I mean is they get private access with people. They can talk to people in those booths, learn about them. That doesn't happen in all Christianity. Pastors don't know what the hell is going with all their practitioners. Do you know what I'm saying?
Exactly.
It's a different level of intrusion into people's lives. And because I believe because of that inclusion, I think, gives them a stronghold to manipulate. Because if you and me talk every day, aren't you going to start trusting me? Yeah, couldn't I violate that trust as a person in power? Oh, yes.
It's a perfect breeding ground for, like, grooming pedophilia.
That's what I'm saying.
Pedophilia is perfect grooming because there's also a documentary series I watched called The Keepers where this nun gets two of the priests were this was back in the 70s, were pedophiles, and she was trying to stop it. My friend of mine who wasn't a was like, can you see that happening? I'm like, I absolutely can. Even today in 2017, 2018, I can totally see that happening.
Yeah.
But now, priests and religious people are put on such a freakishly high pedestal, they're like God. And not that I believe God has any value, even if he or she was real, but I'm like, they're still human beings. And human beings, as we discussed, are flawed, fucked up things.
Yeah, and we put them in mental hospitals and jails when they violate us. And could give them counseling. I think that people in prisons should be getting counseling. I think that we should have prisons as correction centers, not as holding, places or whatever they are. Or actually breeding grounds for more crime, truly.
And prisons have horrible recidivism rates simply because people get so institutionalized that their brains are like, we can't function in normal society, when, at least in my opinion, prisons should be like, hey, you fucked up, you did this, whatever, robbed a store, here's your punishment, learn from your punishment.
Well, and also, to me, we're never going to stop the robbing from the store problem, while we allow poverty. I mean, people don't randomly wake up one day and go, unless they're actually a psychopath or have some kind of problem, don't generally wake up when they're all their needs met and go, I'm going to go rob someone. I'm going to go. I mean, that's not generally the situation that it starts that kind of motivation. I'm not saying that some people, once they get rich, they just want more. But I'm saying if you have your needs met, not too many rich people go out and rob stores, So it's not a problem to me that we're facing adequately. We're not looking at, okay, what's really going on? What can we really do to fix this? I'd say that we to fix some of it is put places for kids to have, more parks, more places to play, more places to be educated. Exactly. I'm telling you, education is like an inoculation against, being more aggressive. You can look at the fact that people with higher educations have less chance of being, in violent crimes. I mean, it's not the people that are uninformed or somehow promoting of crimes. It's just that when your mind has ways of managing itself or managing its navigation of the world better, then it doesn't have to resort to violence as its only option. And it's like having a toolbox and only thinking it has a hammer in there and nothing else.
And it goes back to schools need you, because you probably know how wonderfully public schools are run in this country.
Yeah, not wonderful.
Teaching kids not to just regurgitate blah, blah, blah happened in 1802, which I'm not saying past history isn't something you should learn, because definitely we should learn about why being a Nazi is wrong, various other things that were bad in history.
Obviously.
But we also need to learn critical thinking skills, value theory thinking. In general, even if for whatever reason, but even if it leads you to, for whatever reason, to a religion, you need to have some kind of value theory and critical thinking as to why you want to be Jewish, Catholic, Buddhist, whatever.
Or even you could use value theory. Let's just say someone wants to be religious. You could use value theory and still be religious. You can't be an axiological atheist, obviously. But you could use value theory removed from axiological atheists. Just use value theory and approach your religion and be more moral, more caring, more ethical, and focus on only the positive things of the religion. If they did that, I would be not so caring about religion. Do all the positive, I'll have less reason to fight you guys. But certainly, it's not like it's equal. It's not like all Catholics want us to go against the Catholic Church, right? Against their pedophilia things. No, they do. Oh, well, you need to understand. Oh, all kinds of apologists for it is more likely.
Exactly. And it's just always interesting when people just, for their belief, quote the Bible, which, fine, that's part of your belief system. It's like, let's take the Bible out of here, whatever religious text. What is your personal opinion about what is in the book?
Yeah, what's your values? Where are you going to justify that you're a moral person while you say things or support things that are immoral? I mean, like you said, I can't go, well, I don't personally rape, but I support all rapists. I'm not doing it, so it's not me. Yeah, well, it's your value. And so as far as an axiology is concerned, we care about value, so the value you just professed is enough to me to judge you.
I actually got in trouble with a religion teacher in high school because he was trying to tell us, well, if somebody questions your religious belief, you just need to recite what's called the Nicene Creed. I forget what's in it, but it states a bunch of stuff in it. And I'm like, raise my hand, and he goes, yes, what's your question? I'm like, well, that's all and good that we can recite a prayer, but I'm like, any idiot can memorize something. That doesn't mean they're putting thought behind what the prayer means.
Right.
And he's like, well, what do you mean? I'm like, okay, say some dude goes, why do you believe in Catholicism? And I recite the prayer. There's no guarantee that that person will just accept that I just recited something to them. Granted, they could. But I'm like, well, what if they go, well, why do you believe what's in that prayer? How are we supposed to answer that if that's what we're supposed to do? He's like, well, that just doesn't happen in real life. I'm like, yes, it does. I'm questioning you about it right now. Like, what do we do if they ask us a question like, what do you believe about A, B, C, and D? And I listed some stuff out of the prayer, and he's like, well, just repeat it to them, and they'll believe you. I'm like,
why not? Children do.
And I'm thinking, you have a master's degree. There should be some, better education or explanation, critical thinking skills. I'm like, I'm sorry, but if, an 18-year-old is out logicking, which I know is not a word, but using logic better than what a middle-aged man is doing, there's an issue with that, in my opinion.
Well, but I mean, different people could have different levels. I mean, you could have a 16-year-old be better than a person who's 80. I mean, so I don't think the ageism to me either way matters to me personally. I mean, it matters to me that I do agree with you that it certainly you would assume that a person who's lived that long has had enough experience, even if nothing else, with other people. And certainly someone who is claiming to could teach children, as you said, or instruct them or aid them in some way should be somewhat informed. I mean, that seems like just the simplest requirement that you're going to help with kids. That's like I volunteered before at a after school program for youth, inner city youth, when I was in California. And imagine if I went there and I taught an art class, right? Imagine if I did the art class, but I didn't ever do art, ever. I mean, it would be the stupidest thing to put me as a teacher. So the fact that a person puts themselves or someone else has put them in that position, it not only to me speaks to that person's lack of an ability to answer you. It shows that the people that put them, or accepted that person being put in that position to teach children isn't expecting much out of them either.
And you would think that someone who, and granted, I know that they have their bios written on the school's website, and if I'm remembering correctly, he had a master's in Christian education, and you'd think somebody who started and completed a program in Christian education, or education period, would be able to have some kind of logical explanation for this is why we use this to explain our beliefs.
Well, people use pseudo-logic all the time. They put things together that's actually fallacies and they claim it's logic. Or they just claim things that barely even could fit common sense and call it logic. I mean,
he couldn't even do that. Which is what was funny about it. And then he sends an email to my parents that I was, quote, being argumentative.
Well, I think that's why it's a good thing to do my hammer of truth. Whenever there's a resistance, somebody is I'm talking to and they're not wanting to get logic or whatever, I don't demand they do logic. That's, I think, one of the things I'm different in. Is that, in other words, so to me, how we get to logic, okay, for me, thinking-wise, you break it down, the lowest thing that happens is we feel sensations in our body. Whether we feel it, realize it mentally, or is actually we feel it, some sensation in our physical body. The whole point is we're assessing this information, right? So so once we assess it, we have thoughts. So the first, in a sense, part of any ideas of reality are that we think. That's why Descartes says we think, therefore I am. Well, to me, the feelings are occurring, and an automatic response to feelings is that we think. We don't have control over these sensations. Somebody punches you, you can't choose to not feel it. So There's no, you don't have to think, well, I just got hit. Does that hurt? You don't, it's an automatic thing. So to me, we need to understand that the first thing that we have is feelings. This is real important because this is something you can always get to anyone. Well, maybe not anyone, almost anyone. Because some people can be resistant, or somehow have, either intoxicated or just whatever. But they're thinking when I mean intoxicated, it could be anything. It could be mental illness, could be emotions, could be drugs, could whatever. Something is interfering with their thinking. But in general, people don't have that. So the first thing that happens is feeling. Next comes thinking, a response to the feeling. Then a person that desires their thinking to make sense generally will go to reason. In other words, an ordered set of thinking. It's like critical thinking. It's not just random, because if someone says I'm thinking, that doesn't mean it's reasonable. But generally, when we say something is reason, it has to be reasonable. It can't be some logical fallacy, and we can still call it reason. You can call thinking a logical fallacy and it not be inaccurate, because thinking itself is not. But reason is an ordered set to me of thinking. So reason comes next. Reason then gives us the axioms, like axiology, the axioms for logic. In other words, logic says this can't happen and this can't happen and be called logic. Well, those are value judgments that you're making. You're making axiological claims about thinking. So to me, that's the higher end, though, that a lot of people can't do because they can't figure out and understand that things should have axioms in the world. Like, for us to understand this English that we're talking, we have to know something about English. So we have to, in a sense, something has to come before we can talk. Well, the same thing with logic. Reason comes before and builds what's necessary for logic, to me. So then we use logic. So a lot of times we'll say people don't use logic. Well, logic and reason are not the same thing. So if they can't get logic, that's higher end or methodological rationalism is what it is logic to me. And then like methodological logic is math to me. And then methodological math approaching, in a sense, the real world or natural world becomes physics. And then you get science all coming from thinking and originally happening in feeling. So if they won't do logic, if I can't logic with somebody, I just step back to reason. Just get him reasonable. Okay, what's reasonable? Get them on the same page. Okay, but you agree that this is reasonable. So I'm getting them to agree with reason. Right? So I say, well, you do agree that it's important to think about things, right? I mean, do you believe that we should just blindly believe? I mean, do you blindly believe your faith? Oh, no, I don't blindly believe. Okay, reason. Okay, good. Well, so then you believe it's reasonable. I'm trying to get them processed into thinking. And then if I can, bring them back to logic because it's higher. But if I can't get them to reason, often because of cognitive dissonance, denial, or just maybe they don't understand, then I have to go down before reason, which is just thinking. And some people, if you can get them to start critical thinking about anything, that can bring you back to being more reasonable. So you say, okay, well, if you were to classify this or this as love with your child, like you were saying, or how you would treat a parent, or a grandparent, how should a grandparent be treated? Should we punch them? Should we feed them less? I mean, they're about to die anyways, or do they deserve full dignity? In a sense, you're getting them thinking. They're like, because they would like, well, how would you treat your grandmother? Are you saying that you don't care? You just let her die because there's certain tribes that used to do that. They would just walk an elderly person out in the woods and leave them and let them starve to death. Or they would just push them off a cliff. They felt that was being humane to the tribe. And the person dying often, was doing it at the belief that they were benefiting the tribe. But that's nonsense, right? We know, especially if you have resources. If we have resources, that's really nonsense. So if you look at that, you get into thinking, right? Then we can bring them back to reasoning now. Now they're starting to agree with what's reasonable. Because sometimes people will get so like in a loop or something where they get caught up in their own bullshit, and they're just like you said, reading a script. They're not talking. They're not thinking. They're not doing anything. They're just reading a damn script. So I love to fuck with people's scripts. Rip up their script, make them write a new script, even if they have to do that, because at least it's out of their own mind, as you said, not just reading off of a fucking script. Because the only hope I ever have as a firebrand atheist, I feel, is to get them thinking. Doubting to me is not enough. Doubt, in fact, in some religions is considered a test of faith. It's a good thing. It happens sometime in your faith journey. But if I can get you to think, you will start to have that nicking away, chipping away at your mind. Exactly. Because you understand thinking. So my goal, I don't, like some people say that their goal is just to get people to doubt. No, I want you to think.
Exactly. And it's like, a friend of mine, I was talking to him, and he's like, well, I like, and I'm not even going to mention the religion he's in, but he's like, well, I like the ritual of it. He's like, everyone likes ritual. I'm like, if you're going off of a ritual, it's one thing of like, okay, I'm going to shower today, shower, shit, shave, in my house. Those are like understandable. You should be doing those things because obviously showering, eating, going to your
job, those sort of things, performing your job the way you're supposed to, those are benefiting you because they're improving your life. Personal hygiene benefits you because then you're healthy, and obviously doing your job is bringing in the money society thinks that you need to function, so you can have an apartment or a house, food, if you need medicine, whatever, But, like, just constantly praying, doing whatever, because it always confuses me that people will, like, freak out because, oh, I don't have the money to tithe. God's going to be mad. I'm like, shouldn't God understand if he's such a, quote, like we were mentioning earlier, a loving parent where, let's say your car breaks down. You need that. Nowadays, a car is, you can say it's a convenience, but honestly, having a car benefits people. Oh, yeah. For multiple reasons. Or a medical bill came up. Like, you need your insulin, or like in my case, I need my inhaler. Or anything like that. Shouldn't God understand that something may have come up that you're either short on tithing, you can't do it that week? Like, if I owed you $200 and I'm like, I had to get an inhaler that took $60 away from the $200 I'm paying you back, but here's $140. Like I said, logic. You understand, okay, I want Andrew to have her inhaler because it helps her. Mm-hmm. Because obviously you want your friend to breathe. Or at least you should, because you, at least on some level, care about my life. So, I'm like, shouldn't God understand that? If God is all-seeing, all-powerful, whatever.
Should.
But if he doesn't, there's something, why are you giving him such allegiance?
Yeah. Well, and because they don't think, they just think that they're supposed to believe. It's not a thinking thing. That's why my goal is to get him to think. And like I said, let's just say they won't think. Like, so sometimes people get stuck and they won't think, whatever reason they get overloaded or whatever. And so then, fine, I go back to feelings. I'm not. It's like, that's what I'm saying is that some people, if they can't do logic with them, they can't even talk to people. Me, I can talk to almost anybody because well, also, I mean, it's not like I'm just special. I mean, I took counseling, and my degree is in counseling. I mean, do you think that I would have to say, oh, I won't counsel anyone who's not reasonable? That's funny. Yeah. Because most people, including me, could be very unreasonable, especially with our personal issues. So,
or emotional.
And emotions generally have nothing to do with reason. They're emotional. They're not connected to justifications that always make sense. Immediacy to the external world. Now, it doesn't mean that people aren't experiencing stuff like, say, PTSD. You're not experiencing the real world's threat. You're experiencing the internal threat from a previous real world experience. So in a sense, it's still not illogical, even though the emotions aren't relating correctly to the natural external world at the moment. Internally, they're not inappropriate. They're just the person is experiencing it again. But I'm saying, so emotions, it's not a requirement to me for people to get in or out of emotions. To me, rational thinking doesn't have to limit emotions. The fact, if you look at studies, they say actually that emotional thinking aids in rational thinking. The point is, it's the axiology, really. It's understanding where to place those emotions. In other words, like if every time, you saw a baby, you felt like punching it, even if you felt that, axiologically, you would assess that idea and you'd be like, I'm not doing that.
Yeah, the parents get mad, cops get called, things like that.
Well, I'm just saying, what I'm saying is that internally you experience a response to that idea. The point is, a lot of people, they just, in a sense, live in their eyes. They look at the thing, they get a thought, and they just respond without thinking. They don't stop for a second and go, is that a good thought? Is that a productive thought? Is that a true thought? Is it an accurate thought? They just go thought. Oh, well, like, and so that's what my goal is, especially from, getting my counseling. And also I did intervention because I was going to become a drug and alcohol counselor. And so I'm able to deal with people that are intoxicated. And so to me, if you, as a counselor, if I can get to people that are intoxicated, and, tell them they have to go to a rehab when they don't want to end the addiction that they're not wanting to stop, and to tell them that, well, look what it's doing to your family. You are trying to reason and logic with the person who has to completely devoid themselves of logic and reason when it relates to their addiction. So to me, that's why I laugh when people say, oh, you can't change people's minds. Maybe you can't, but don't say that no one can. And another thing too, to me, is how many techniques have you tried? Let's just say that I'm not 100% sure more people can't do better, not just me or a few people or whatever, counselors. Yeah. I think a lot more people could do better. I think first of all, we give up. We justify, I think, to ourselves, oh, they can't logic, so I can't talk to them. Yeah, well, what is your goal, though? If your goal is to demand that everyone has logic, then maybe you can't talk to people. Is that the goal? As an axiologist, my goal is humanity. I want it to flourish, and I want universal betterment. How could I want anything else?
Exactly. And I was explaining to someone, because I don't remember how the conversation started, but they're like, well, why are you a humanist? And I was like, because I want the world to be a better, more functional, I don't want to say happier, but better, happier, whatever you want to call it, place. And I don't see religion doing that, period. Well, because I see way more examples of it fucking stuff up, or mentally, and there's even been studies, psychological, psychiatric studies showing the hurt that especially Orthodox religions can do on people.
Well, yeah, definitely. In fact, speaking of studies, I was in counseling school. I read a study about this. They did a 78-year study. They did where they did the people with schizophrenia, because they wanted to see, does the different kind of religion, in other words, like a lot of times religion isn't promoted the same, even the same religion throughout time. In other words, like 78 years ago, people that had schizophrenia would come and say, I'm a sinner. I've done something wrong to displease God. I have to make my life more pure, so I've cut off my genitals, because that way God will love me. Then nowadays, with how much there's this dogmatic, especially Christianity, right, that says that other people need to be harmed. Other people are sinners. So now the people with schizophrenia that are generally coming in there at this place in Texas, right, are now saying, I need to get other people because they're sinners. God wants me to help stop this, and which is scary, because these are the kind of people that used to cut off their own genitals. I don't think if you can do that, you'd have too much problem hurting other people.
And it's always aggravating when somebody's like, such an extreme example. I'm like, fine, let's use a micro example of that one, where, granted, you might not be that schizophrenic person who's either cutting off your genitals or attempting to harm others because
True, I'm not saying they all do, you're right.
Again, it's hurting yourself. You may just localize the, I'm horrible, I'm bad because I'm always a sinner. Yeah, you're not perfect. No one is. But at the same time, why should you be causing yourself psychological distress from something that honestly isn't real?
Oh, I know. Well, yeah.
And you're doing it to yourself.
Well, correct. Both of them are negative. Both shows that religion's harmful either way. The positive, loving God was making them feel like they were terrible. And now the hateful God is making them hate everyone else. Both are terrible. Neither of them produced good in the world. to me.
Exactly.
And I agree with you. I think it's not a high percentage. I can't remember now. I think it's like 15 or 10%. I don't know. Don't they cut off their genitals. So I'm not saying. I was just making a comment that anyone that can do that extreme, was certainly, I don't see how you could have a problem hurting other people. You can do that to yourself. Then also the issue, as I was saying, is it went from it's showing how religion's toxic. How the religion changing from, in a sense, a loving God to a hateful God was the difference between them hating themselves and then hating other people. And I was just saying that it's documented that as religion became more hateful of gays, whatever, the people with schizophrenia became more hateful of other people. I'm just saying, so they're mirroring, in a sense, this bullshit. Like you said, imagine what schizophrenia would be like if we didn't have religion. I doubt it would be to the extent of this bullshit. Or it just shows, at least, they were not harmful if the world was not having this hateful God. So the hateful God has got to go, period. But I agree. Look at even the loving God, they're cutting their own genitals off. I mean, they're doing self-harm. They're feeling ashamed and guilty and wrong. Religion is toxic. And I do agree that's a microcosm, so I'm not saying it's everything.
And it's sad to think how far more advanced medicine in general, including psychology or psychiatry, would be if there wasn't religion. Like, you just need to pray your depression, all that stuff. I'm like, no, that's not. Or think about possession. People who, quote, were possessed. It's like, it's more than likely they have epilepsy, bipolar, schizophrenia, whatever, and needs to be medically treated with whatever the appropriate medicine is and therapeutic intervention.
Yeah, not exorcist.
Religion.
Like I said,
Same thing with addiction.
Yeah, let's say, yeah, exactly. They need real treatment. And they need real, help. And that's why I think that, for me, that's why I spend so much time also in trying to teach people techniques of how to be better Firebrand Atheists and how to be out there and take this shit down. Because I feel like when I was a kid, I got taught religion. And then I come to atheism and I don't know who to believe. I don't know how to think. And it doesn't, even if you say I watch someone can do a great job, if they don't, teach me in the way that I can understand, then it's not helping me to do it myself. I don't want heroes. I'm an anarchist. I'm not trying to create heroes, not myself or otherwise. I mean, I'm trying to do what is heroic because somebody's got to fucking do the good stuff. Exactly. Not saying there's not other atheists doing it. There is a lot of atheists doing it. I'm just saying all of us have got to do what's right. All of us have to speak out. Change doesn't happen in silence. And it doesn't happen by intentionally trying to offend people, nor does it happen by not trying to offend people. You just have to do what's right. And you know what? That's going to offend some people.
Exactly. I mean, any historical figure for any reason is going to end up offending at least, at the freak bare minimum, one person.
Like nothing else, probably their parents.
Change isn't going to happen.
I said probably, if nothing else, their parents.
Exactly.
Often, I mean, especially if their parents are religious. I mean, I guarantee my mom was not happy, when I became, atheist. I think she would have been way more happier if I had become gay, because in a sense, then I still could be with Jesus. I mean, I could be a Christian gay, but I can't be an in heaven atheist.
Exactly. My mom's so tries to get me to go to church on Christmas and Easter. I'm like, why? She's like, well, it'll still get you, and I'm quoting her, points with God. I'm like, if you're going off of points with God, why don't I go to, like, a Buddhist temple or a Jewish synagogue? That's still God, if you're going off of that very loose definition. She's like, I'm in Catholic church. Blah, blah, blah. I'm like, Mom, that makes no sense. There's no... Like, I understand that there's, like, care, you want me to, like, be with Jesus, whatever, but I'm like, your sentence just...
So I have a question. I don't know about tons about Catholics, but so does they believe only Catholics go to heaven? I'm just wondering.
That, to be honest, but it wouldn't, knowing her, shock me.
It wouldn't shock me either. I wouldn't shock me. Any fanatic people think fanatically. Like, yeah, surprise. That's always thing they tell me before. Oh, Damien, you have more faith than me as an atheist. Yeah, I have a understanding of the natural world and the things I can experience, see, taste, feel, and I'm the one with the problem? When I say that I look at all that and I see no reason for anything, and you project all this stuff that is not seen anywhere, like, oh yeah, that is like wrong. Just like someone said, well, you have faith in reason, because I always say that reason is my only master. Well, to me, reason is the point past thinking that becomes reasonable. So it's the only thing I'll agree to is that things have to be reasonable. But so you have faith in reason. I'm like, no, you're not understanding. Reason is a process, okay? And I can quickly look if it's working or not by how it relates to the accuracy of ideas or the natural world. If I project things that are not true, I can very quickly find out if that works. I mean,
I think people that use that faith comment, they're like, oh, they have faith like I do, except they're just misplacing it in atheism.
Yeah.
No.
Oh, I'm sure that's what they want to think. Yeah, definitely, because they don't want their magical nonsense belief to sound like it's a magical nonsense belief.
Mm-hmm.
Like they'll hate when I go, all you do is believe in the magic. Oh no, I don't. No, we have God's love. That's magical being, right? I mean, it's not a material being. Right? It's like, and then they go look up what magic means. You fit the criteria with your belief exactly. It's not even, like they somehow think it's like it has to be magic wands or something, or it's not, magic. Like, oh yeah, that's the only thing magic is.
Like you're going to hell. Like, can I go to Hogwarts too? That'd be fun.
Well, just think, people showing you cards where it looks like they can do it with their hand tricks, and they call that magic. Well, magic means that something in the natural world has been violated in some sort of a non-natural way.
Is what God is.
Like, yeah. And it's something that would be phantasmagorical if it was true. That's why people are like, wow, we're in awe when we see magic. Why? Because we can't believe it.
Exactly.
If it caused non-awe, then it wouldn't be magic. It would be like trivial. Like if I said, hey, look, I can put my hand in my pocket, and you went, oh my goodness, I'm shocked.
Well, it was funny. The last time I had one of those religious knocking door to door, they weren't like Mormons or Jehovah's Witnesses. Don't remember what church they were in, but had a brief conversation with them just to amuse myself. And she's like, "Well, what if God whispered in your ear?" I'm like, "Well, then I would probably assume it was the TV, because I usually have my TV on. Don't have it on right now, but I'm like, how do you know it's not a demon in my ear?"
Yeah.
Because you're giving the same supposition that could also be the devil telling me to do something, couldn't it?
Yeah, they could.
So, well, God's going to close the door on you and not let you in heaven. I'm like, well, that kind of proves my point that God is not a loving parent.
There you
like,
go.
Well, if my kid did that, I'm like, okay, we're done. Go have fun with someone else.
Yep. Well, I'm gonna go ahead and wrap it up because I need to go. But is there anything else you wanted to say or ask or whatever before we go?
I mean, not really anything I can think of, because you always are good at giving advice on how to, logically talk to people or kind of get them to, at least, I don't want to say plant a seeds. I hate using that term, but plant little ideas. Things of that nature. I can't really think of anything at the moment.
Well, let me rephrase kind of what you said. So you plant ideas. So what I do is I try to help people understand the requirement of honest thinkers to use belief etiquette. That you should have good belief acquisitions. Anybody. Not just me, not anybody. Anything that's presented to you, you should assess it. I mean, this is not a harsh thing. You should assess it. Is it reasonable?
Oh, yeah.
Is it worthwhile? Is it valuable? Then, after you get beliefs, you should do good belief maintenance, which means you're constantly rechecking. Wait a minute. Does this still match the accuracy of the world? Does this still match reason? Because sometimes when we first are presented with an idea, we could accept it. Or after time hearing it, we could accept it. And maybe we feel it's true. But then we find another piece of information that puts it into question. We should welcome that, not shun it. We should have good belief maintenance and go, oh, wow, I never thought about that. Check it out.
Exactly.
See its warrant. See its justification. And if necessary, guess what? Update your belief. Either remove the old one or add some new features to it. Because science does this. Science says the world is, round. And they go, oh, well, it's not totally round. It's kind of like, pear-shaped or something. Or it's kind of like lumpy. In a sense, so it's still basically the shape that's close to being round. But round is no longer accurate. So we have to update. So that's a good belief maintenance. Everyone should welcome that. That's called being accurate to the world. So a mind not willing to be wrong is a mind that's already going to be wrong.
Exactly. I'm willing to admit A, when I'm wrong, when presented with new information. And, it's just like you said, growth as a person leads to the betterment of the person if you're open and willing to new ideas. And if I find out something I thought was correct isn't, you know what? I'll research more about it, learn more, and evolve.
Well, and that goes back to my last thing there's three things. So it's in my belief etiquette, just standard, that I try to force on people. Because I try to force you to understand its importance. I'm not saying you have to believe me. I'm saying you have to see its value, its reason. So the last thing is that we have honest belief relinquishment. That we can honestly look at a belief, and I don't care how much we like it, how much it makes us feel good. If it's wrong, then we let it go. And that takes a real intellectual honesty to let go of things that we may like. I mean, I like the thought that I was invincible with God. It's not true, and I have to let that go. I like the thought of my own ego, that I am infallible, that I am perfect, because that also is an error. So in a sense, it's a real check that an honest thinker. And to me, that's why I say, you don't have to believe the way I do. You don't have to be an honest thinker. I'm not requiring you to. I'm saying if you want to tell yourself and others you're an honest thinker, you're probably going to have to do something close to what I said.
Yep.
Whether or not you want to accept it, it's not that you are trying to be like me. I'm simply showing you that there's no other choice to be an honest thinker. It's like I said, reason is reasonable. Can't be, in a sense, unreason. It can't be a logical fallacy. So in a sense, you're limited. It's like the natural world. If I want to make, a car, I can't, just pack a bunch of dirt together and then scrape it into, carve it into the shape of a car, and it's a car. Just looking like something of value does not mean you actually have something of value. So don't get fooled by pseudo value. All right. Well, thank you, everybody, and have a great day, and I appreciate, everyone coming out and taking a look.
Exactly. Thank you.
So I want to end all my videos now, and hope everybody's doing good.
Yep.
So, and I really appreciate you taking the time to talk with me also. And
of course.
I wish the best for you. So
same to you.
I'm going to